Last week, we dove into anger, the kind that, particularly the kind of anger that shows up in relationships. We talked about how it's not about being bitter. We also talked about how seeing clearly and recognizing patterns sometimes shows up as anger. But this week I want to talk about wanting and desire. And not just like the kind, polite wants, like, can I have another glass of iced tea, please? Not like that. I want to particularly talk about the kinds of desires that makes our heart race a little bit. Like, I want to be kissed. I want to be kissed like I'm the most desirable woman in the world. I want to talk about that kind of wanting, that kind of desire. The idea for this episode came to me while I was exchanging audio messages with one of my best girlfriends on Voxer the other day. And Voxer is the same platform that we use in Coach in Your Pocket, by the way, and my clients absolutely love it. But anyway, she was sharing something tender, and she literally lowered her voice to tell me that she still wants to be loved. Like, she wants to experience the kind of love, the kind of alive connection that makes soul pimples break out on her skin, right? But at 52, she feels like having that kind of desire is something she should hide. And I think a lot of women feel like that. We're just so good at editing ourselves, right? At making our wants small enough to be palatable. I should be grateful for companionship. I shouldn't need passion at this age. Maybe I'm asking for too much. But the ache for real connection, the longing to be truly seen, it does not have an expiration date. Your heart does not check your driver's license before deciding what it wants. But something shifts inside of us when we start telling the truth about our desires. We just spend so much time, again, making our wants manageable and modest, as if longing for deep connection somehow makes us greedy or ungrateful, right? My friend, she's successful and respected in her field, and she's doing great work in the world. But there she was, whispering about wanting real love like she needed to apologize for it. It's something I see all the time. So many accomplished women who they're so good at navigating boardrooms, and a lot of them handle really complex family dynamics. Look, don't we all? And they manage a lot of stuff. They have a lot of things on their plate, yet when it comes to their hearts, they make themselves small, they edit, they settle. If I had a nickel for every time I heard a woman say, "At least he's kind," or it's comfortable, or something I hear a lot now that I'm at this season of my life, something I hear a lot is, "I'm too old to start over." When you think about it, that ache that you feel when you go to bed alone, or longing for someone that truly sees you, the hollow feeling of lying next to someone who feels like they're a million miles away, and then like waking up and accepting that you're starving for connection. And that can be true whether you're in a relationship or not. But then you catch yourself editing your truth, careful not to want too much, careful not to seem too desperate or too needy, as if wants can be too big or desires can be inappropriate. I mean, that's a podcast episode for another day. Desires can be inappropriate, but that's not what we're talking about. But when something deep inside whispers that there's more to this. How do we trust that voice? Like, how do we get to the place where we can actually trust that? Even for myself, like I spent a lot of years working really hard to want less and just be satisfied with what I had. So much time spent sitting with my therapist, listing all the reasons that I should be content. I had a good job and my home life was good. I was in a stable relationship at the time, but I was just really talking myself out of what I wanted and then asking her to co-sign. Like we do this dance where we negotiate with ourselves and we say things like, maybe I'm just being romantic. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a romantic myself, but no relationship is perfect. And what if this is as good as it gets? In the meantime, we're losing sleep. We got a headache and our stomach is knotted because our bodies know so much and our minds are trying to talk us out of stuff. I don't mean for this episode to sound like a downer, but I've really been thinking about this because there are just so many women who appear to have it all and sometimes think that they don't have time for, deep connection. There's the divorced mom who thinks that she's too complicated for real love, and women who have been married or partnered for a really long time, and now they're convinced that it's just unrealistic to want passion too. There's also some people who are in younger relationships that feel that way too. But we just dim our desires until they're barely a flicker. And then we wonder why we feel half alive, right? It makes me sad. It makes me sad. But this is also one of the main reasons that I'm opening the doors to sovereignty next month. Because I keep meeting so many women who are done with settling, done with making themselves small, done with talking themselves out of what they really want. It just isn't enough to understand the patterns of the behaviors, right? The patterns of making ourselves small, the patterns of talking ourselves out of stuff. It's not enough to understand. We're experts at understanding. It's about actually changing them. And that's what the program's all about. But for this week, I just want to invite you to collect some data because, love to invite you to collect data. I just want you to be curious, though, about your relationship with wanting. Notice what happens when you imagine having what you desire. Not what's practical or not what makes sense, but what you really want. Maybe you're on a first date or you're lying next to your partner of 20 years or you're sitting alone with your morning coffee. Just pay attention to the sensations that arise when you let yourself dream without editing, without being practical, without reasoning. Notice what happens in your body. Does your throat tighten? Does your stomach clench? Do you find yourself adding a but to the end of all your desires? But I really want this but, right? We all do it. And then I want you to sit with these questions. What would change if I trusted myself enough to want what I want? Or here's a better question. What would I want if there was no limits? What does my future self want right now? And here's the biggie. Who would I be if I stopped apologizing for wanting more? Love is learning to trust your heart's deepest longings. It's learning to trust that these longings aren't random. They're just dots that lead you home to yourself. And if you're feeling that resonance, that knowing that it's time to transform some of these patterns, again, not just to understand them, but to actually change them, get on the wait list for sovereignty. The link is in the show notes. You deserve so much more than making peace with less. That's all I've got for today. I love you. I really do. I say that at the end, but I want you to know that I mean it. I love you. And this podcast and the things that I talk about in this podcast is simply because I want you to love you too. Until next week, again, I love you.